burgers I see.
Everything is going to hell down here in Texas.
Here's our D.R.E and the D.R.E, baby, D.R.E, rock, cock, and Joe rally. D.R.E and the D.R.E, baby, D.R.E, rock, cock, and Joe rally. We're coming in, only seeking the truth about JFK. It's the Long Coming Podcast crew. Tell 'em, Joe, here we go.
And here we go.
That's right, Joe. What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode number 351 of the Lone Gunman Podcast. Sorry, I've got this Dr. Dre song in my head, you know.
We would play it if we didn't get copyrighted.
Yes, we would. Long Beach, Inglewood.
Love
What's
it.
up? So good.
Great song. And a fantastic title by you, by the way.
I try. So yeah, we're gonna be talking about the D.R.E this evening, the Directorio Revolutiono Estudiantilo, whatever, otherwise known as the D.R.E.
Yeah. What is the over-under of how many times we were going to butcher that?
Well, that's the only one because I ain't gonna say it again.
I was trying to trick you because I'm not going to say it either.
It's gonna forever, henceforth, be known as the D.R.E.
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna name the episode "Beatings by Dre" instead of like "Beats by Dre,"
Mhm.
but I went ahead and decided to go with the other one though first. So, Joe, go ahead and welcome everybody in, if you will, please, sir.
Of course. I would love to if I can get my mouse working.
Fuzai waiting to be acknowledged here.
Yes, we have Tiny Dancer. One's ready. One of the first. Mr. Jack Taylor, how are you, sir? And of course, Mr. Paul Cummings as well. Welcome. Good evening, sir. Sally, of course, staying up late
Sally.
across the pond. And I mentioned this in the chat, Sally. I have some Joe's hockey highlights for you. But that is a segment that is saved for members only on Wednesday. So,
Tease.
Mr. I know, a little bit of a tease. Well, hey, you got to hype the members only, right? Mr. Scott Edwards, Viva Lone Gunman Podcast, yes, sir.
Viva.
South to West, how are you, sir? Mr. Big Bad Josh, aloha, everybody.
What's up, Joshy?
I guess that means he's in Hawaii, or is he not, and just using aloha?
He might be Hawaiian. You never know.
He could be. Mr. Slacker Dan, how are you? Howdy, friends. Howdy to you, sir. Mr. Anthony Tripp, morning, everyone.
Good day, sir. It's morning where you're at, but it ain't here, bro.
In Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good morning.
You know what I like to do, Rob?
To the future.
And I've done this to you a few times. I love to say morning, like when we meet up like a few minutes before the show. It throws everyone off. I do it to a lot of people. They're like, it's not morning. And I'm like, obviously. But
shit, Sherlock.
They don't get the troll. But Mr. Roger, good evening, everybody.
Apparently my webcam gets the troll. I'm going to beat this son of a bitch to pieces.
Moose Heaven, how are you, sir? I haven't seen you in a few weeks, I think, or maybe longer. But welcome back.
Welcome back, sir.
Hey now, T-Biz.
T-Biz.
Straight out of Havana. Yeah, Havana will come up a couple times.
Habana.
PSV Odyssey, how are you, sir?
What's up, Paul?
Of course, Trey, if I haven't already said his name. I don't think I did.
Forgot about Trey.
Nah, that is a good one, sir. That is a good one. Pro Vowon from Dublin, Ireland. Provawan. Yes. I continue to butcher it.
Padawan.
Mr. Paul, how are you? Lenichi. And the double B. Of course, we couldn't commence without the double B.
You know, that's just how the man will do you, Brandon. Yeah. Sometimes
That
get you.
sounds like an excuse, Rob, of why he's 6 minutes late. Just saying, Brandon. Just saying.
Double B background. Yeah.
You know it.
He's here. That's all that matters.
All right, that is it, sir.
Awesome. Well, for those of our member folks who hang out with us on Wednesday night, you knew we kind of took a giant shite on Jefferson Morley for his recent tweetings and claims and all of that stuff. Because once again, Joe, the entire JFK research community was served up a giant plate of nothing burgers. Again. Now, the reason I kind of take this personally, Joe, is because, you know, it kind of makes the entire conspiracy side of the JFK assassination research community look like idiots when our biggest mouthpiece continues to fire off horse shit. Now, we gave him credit where credit was due. Okay, you wanted these damn Joe Needy's files and you finally got them. Mm-hmm. But he's making claims that just are not there. And if you would like any proof of that, go back and listen to Wednesday's show. Or hey, head on over to Fred Lifton's blog, where he has about 10 blog entries just tearing the man apart as only Fred Lifton can do. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. He's serving it up on a silver platter for the lone nutters to just feast on. Because while we do have the Joe Needy's files, and while, hey, now we can prove that Howard was George Joey Needy's, Howard being the guy that the D.R.E. was reporting to and writing letters to and informing to, okay? There is no definitive link between Oswald and the D.R.E. before Oswald does anything. I believe, Joe, the first time that we have Carlos Bringuier reporting anything out of New Orleans to the Miami chapter of the D.R.E., which was the main one, the one that reported directly to Howard, if you will. Okay. Carlos Bringuier is not reporting directly to the CIA. We had this little conversation on Wednesday where Carlos Bringuier was much like Lee Harvey Oswald in the FPCC. Okay. He's the only delegate of the D.R.E. in New Orleans. Okay. You have to remember their headquarters, their main branch is Miami.
Right.
After they were exiled from Cuba, right? After Fidel Castro kicked all these people out, many of them left, formed different groups. Some stayed with the D.R.E. But for some reason, the CIA took a shine to the D.R.E. and would use them as a propaganda group. And I'm going to read something here from a CIA internal memo, Joe.
Okay.
Just to explain to everybody exactly what I'm talking about here. And I'll throw it up on the screen as well. The D.R.E. was conceived, created, and funded by the agency in September of 1960 and terminated in December of 66. It was outgrowth of the activist student group in Cuba, which fought against Batista and later against Castro. Many of the leaders came into exile around September of 1960 and were subsequently trained and infiltrated into Cuba by the agency in late 60, where they operated by obtaining intelligence, setting up action teams up through the Bay of Pigs invasion. While the D.R.E. was initially set up as a psychological warfare outfit, the organization was given a large amount of paramilitary aid in funds and material. After the Bay of Pigs, the D.R.E. engaged in independent military actions, which declined at agency direction and because of a reduction in funds from late 1962 until termination of the group in 1966. Members were used as political action agents for publishing propaganda, which was sent throughout the hemisphere. They attended international student meetings at agency direction and produced radio programs and special propaganda campaigns. After the cutback in military operations, many of the best D.R.E. members relocated in other areas. At present, there are delegations in most Latin American countries which have maintained some contact with various agency stations over the years, although the D.R.E. is no longer very active. During the organization's 6-year period of active existence, D.R.E. personnel were in contact with several JMWave staffers, i.e. Howard, and outside contract agents. However, from January of 65 through December of 66, contact with D.R.E. personnel was limited to only 2 agents, Juan Manuel Salvat, which Joe will get into a little more later.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the current D.R.E. Secretary General who is now operating a bookstore in Miami, Florida, and also Fernando Garcia Chacon, who was relocated to El Salvador. Now, all this was released, Joe, back in 1998 by the CIA. This is what we call old news. And again, at the time, the D.R.E. was receiving up to $25,000 a month to fund their propaganda campaigns and conduct their little raids into Cuba. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to talk about one of the leaders of the D.R.E., a guy by the name of Luis Fernandez Roca.
Yes.
Who Morley did manage to interview, I believe back in the 90s. And he told Morley that his contact at the CIA was a man named Howard. Didn't know his last name. Howard spoke confidently with a New York accent and wore an ornate pinky ring. In Fernandez Roca's view, he compared favorably with the D.R.E.'s previous handler, Ross Crozier, who we'll get into more here in a little bit. He was a great human being, but he was a sergeant, Roca says. When I was dealing with this guy, Howard, I was talking to a colonel. All right, which means this guy had a military backstop, if you will, false identity. And I believe he was outed as Howard Gebler. And we talked Wednesday night about a real life Howard Gebler, who looks a whole hell of a lot like George Ioannidis, and who got put in a Haitian prison in 1965 before he was rescued by a very adventuresome female pilot. Now, we talked also Wednesday night about...
Was it 64 or 65?
65 or 66.
Okay.
Something like that.
I am wrong.
Yeah, Mary Haverstick, the woman who wrote the book about June Cobb, and how they kind of shared in identities, either wittingly or unwittingly. I don't know. I have not read the book yet. I do have it. It's coming.
Maybe a future JFK TLG book review.
But she posits, that possibly, much like Jerry and June Cobb had this weird identity thing going on, and both of them being used by the CIA, that possibly this Howard Gebler guy is a real guy, right? And his identity was used by George Joanides. Jesus, Joe, what are you doing?
Sorry.
You disappeared, Joe. Your camera's off.
Yeah, I had to change my lighting because I was getting some reflection.
Oh, okay.
And I couldn't do it with my headphones in, so sorry about that, sir.
So they would meet, this Fernandez Roca would meet Howard anywhere from 3 times a week to once every 2 weeks. Just depends on how often he had something to tell him. And they used to have a cup of coffee at a Hojo's. That's a Howard Johnson's for you northern folk, down on US 1.
Yes.
So there's lots of examples of letters that were written to Howard by various members of the D.R.E. out of Miami, informing them about certain things, right?
Yeah.
Now, apparently, and I don't know if I have it. I think I do, Joe, but yeah. Okay. So apparently, Carlos Bringuier wrote this on August 21st. Okay. And it's titled Press Relief. I think he means press release. Now, I don't know if he sent this to the headquarters or if he released this to the press in New Orleans. Don't have that information because it's just a press release.
Right.
Or press relief.
Right. But the D.R.E. did release it.
Did they?
I don't know.
Did I say that?
No, I was saying whether it's the main office or him himself.
Well, we have no proof that anybody but Bringuier released this by himself.
Okay.
Because it is signed by him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not signed, the D.R.E. or whatever.
Right. No, and then this is the document I've always heard about the Cubans telling people to write their Congress people about, the Marxist Lee Harvey Oswald before the assassination. This is that document press release.
Yeah, this is it. But again, I don't know if this was sent to Miami. I don't know. Because once we don't have anything official per se from the D.R.E. itself until December 23rd of 1963, when they released, this paper, the Chinchera, extra, read all about it. President of the USA assassinated.
Sir, this was released on November 23rd. No, am I wrong about that?
That's what I just said, Joe.
Oh, I thought you said December. I'm sorry, I misheard you. Sorry, that is my fault.
Yeah, the day after the assassination.
Yes.
The D.R.E., not Carlos Bringuier, but the D.R.E. out of Miami, okay, released this little extra edition of their Chinchera newsletter, okay? And basically, hey, the president's been assassinated. Yeah, no shit. The presumed assassins, and you see who they are up there.
Yes.
Lee Harvey Oswald and Fidel Castro. Now,
Of course.
Carlos Bringuier would go on to write a couple books and do a lot of talks on the road for these extreme right-wing organizations like the John Birch Society, and implicate Fidel Castro as being behind the assassination and puppeteering Oswald to pull it off. And he has stood by this theory all these years. A friend to the end, Joe.
Yeah. I mean, and all the Cuban exiles have maintained this their whole lives. We can go down the list.
Yeah. Now, a lot of newspaper articles that came out on the 22nd about Oswald, and even early the next day, contained a lot of information about Oswald's past that was gleaned from what he did in August of 1963 in New Orleans. Again, he was on the radio, he was on the television. You know, as soon as he got arrested for this, Bill Stuckey and them other dudes were sending all kinds of information to the FBI, CIA, whoever, and letting them know this guy's pro-Castro leanings, pro-communist, Marxist leanings.
Lived in the Soviet Union.
Yeah, his background, former Marine, the whole 9 yards. You know, the perfect setup narrative before it was changed to he's just a lone nut, right? The next day. But on Friday, after he's arrested, all this information is coming out very late. It's coming in fast and furious and starting to appear in various extra editions of newspapers all across the country and world, in fact.
Right.
Very quickly.
Yes.
Now, what's interesting is the D.R.E. also sent a copy of the Oswald interview that Bringuier did with Oswald on the radio or the TV. I'm not exactly sure which.
Mm-hmm.
As you can see here, it just says from the D.R.E., Dr. Dre, to Howard.
Uh-huh.
And it's magnetic, Scotch magnetic tapes.
Yeah.
So, but we don't know when they sent it.
I actually believe I read that it was the day of the 22nd. So
maybe so. I mean, you would think that they would have sent it if they thought it was important after the fracas, after the court hearing, and after debate with Oswald. You'd think Carlos would obtain some of this and send it to the D.R.E. then, and not wait.
Just to interrupt you, Rob, according to what Jane Roman said by Jefferson Morley, Joanides receives tape of Oswald on November 22nd, 63. Joanides learns that his assets in the Cuban Student Directorate, D.R.E., had collected intelligence on Lee Harvey Oswald, accused killer of Kennedy.
Okay, so they didn't send it until November 22nd.
Right. If you believe that he didn't know, Joanides didn't know about Oswald before then, which I'm not sure I believe.
Well, we have no proof of that. That's this whole thing.
Right.
We talked about the golden thread that Morley's been pulling on for all these years, and it just keeps unraveling. We have no sweater on the other end here.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to bring up, too, some of the folks that are bolstering and supporting Jefferson Morley in all this.
Yeah. And you are right. There is no proof that Joanides knew of Oswald before November 22nd. But I was just saying, I find it hard to believe that somehow he didn't get word of this. That's what I was saying.
Well, you and Jefferson Morley can keep on daydream believing there, buddy. Until you got proof.
Right.
Now, I like Matt Crumpton. We guest on the show. We've been on his show. So this is nothing personal towards Matt. But if you read his tweet here very carefully that supports Jefferson Morley, okay, it says the alternative to believing this is a big deal is believing the CIA just happened to assign a guy as liaison to an investigation into the JFK assassination who was the same guy who ran an op with Carlos Bringuier that interacted with Oswald. What a small world. Sorry, I don't think it's all a coincidence. Now, I'm a wordsmith, Joseph, and
You are.
you must pick and choose your words very carefully when you're talking about this case. There is absolutely no proof whatsoever that George Joanides ran any kind of an op with Carlos Bringuier. Right or wrong, Joe?
Technically, yes. Technically, you're correct. Yes. Joanides ran operations with the D.R.E. We have no evidence he ran anything with Bringuier. Am I wrong?
No,
Okay.
you're right.
Okay.
You just said it backwards.
Okay.
But that's
okay. I usually do. I'm sorry. Thank you for clarifying.
So yeah, you have to be very careful how you word things, because when you are a mouthpiece for the conspiracy side of things and you have a podcast like we do, you have to be very specific in what you say. There's absolutely, for him to definitively sit here and say that Joanides ran an op with Carlos Bringuier is irresponsible, I'll say, or he's misinformed. But again, this is how these things get compiled into everybody losing their minds to think that this is something when it's nothing. It's nothing. It's a whole lot of nothing. Yeah, now we know his name was Howard. Cool. We already knew he had another AKA Walter Newby. Cool. Okay.
I think we already knew for a long time that that Howard was Joanides. We just didn't know Gelbler.
Right. And we didn't know with 100% certainty.
Right.
It was thought that he was.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. Words matter. Thank you.
But that we have the documents to actually prove it now. But the documents don't prove anything between the D.R.E. and Oswald or Joanides running anything. If Oswald was doing anything for any agency in New Orleans, it was more than likely for the FBI.
I agree.
Doing like a counterintelligence program. Right?
Yeah.
Because the CIA would not use Oswald to infiltrate one of their own personally funded organizations. Okay. Remember, Carlos Bringuier is the only delegate of the D.R.E. in New Orleans. Now, I did come across something that these Jahomies put out there in New Orleans. They put together a pamphlet. Joe, will the USA be next? Cuba betrayed. Okay. This is a Carlos Bringuier special that he printed up and had published. Okay. The reason we know that is because on the back of the pamphlet, there's this. And it's the first time that I've ever seen anyone else in New Orleans associated with the D.R.E. in New Orleans. Check this out. Bam. Published by Cuban Student Directorate, New Orleans Delegation, P.O. Box 2506, New Orleans, Louisiana, Dr. Carlos Bringuier, delegate. Celso Hernandez, secretary. And Miguel Aguado Cruz, well, Cruz is not on here, but that's who it is the treasurer. Interesting, isn't it, Joe?
Yeah. When
Because
was
these
this
are
published?
Huh?
Sorry. When was this published? 60.
I have no idea.
I think. Okay.
But these are the three Scafuzas who were in the street fracas with Oswald on Canal Street.
Yeah.
The exact three. Yet Dr. Carlos Bringuier is the only delegate. You have a Celso as a secretary and Miguel as a treasurer. And the only thing that I could find that is bringing money into this thing for Carlos Bringuier is you can order these pamphlets from him, for $1, $5, $10, depending on how many you would like.
Yes. Hashtag a grift. Yes.
Hashtag a grift. Now, I find it interesting, Joe, and I was trying to remember what the hell was Oswald's P.O. box in New Orleans? I didn't really have time to look it up, but maybe somebody might know off the top of their head.
I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't either. But I thought it might be interesting to see how close they were together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that it matters.
We have some sleuths in the chat that could do that quickly.
Yeah. So, very interesting that they're running this anti-Castro group with no real members other than themselves. Much like Oswald is running an pro-Castro group with no real members and a fictitious secretary. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very true.
Now, the name Hernandez pops up in various places along the way for all this stuff. And maybe that's for another show to follow that thread down the highway. But Joe, if you'll give us some background on some of these other players in the D.R.E. and also who predecessed Howard Gebler, aka George Joanides, as the handler, and what initiated the change over from Ross Crozier to George Joanides, aka Howard, for the D.R.E. at a very critical time. And we'll take a closer look at some of these guys associated with the Miami chapter of the D.R.E.
Yes. So, like you mentioned, let's start with Ross Crozier, who
Real quick, James says that his P.O. box was 361, like 30061. Thank you, James.
what was that? 3065?
30061.
Oh,
Or no, that P.O. box was 2605.
oh, okay.
So they were way, way, way far apart.
Got it.
What's up, Von Duke?
I like your thinking there, though.
Alain Whitman. What's up, buddy?
Hey.
Hey now.
Yeah, we had a couple more people come in. Turin Horse, what's up, buddy?
Knock one time.
John Nolan, Timothy Ryan, and if I missed anyone else, I apologize.
Kieran.
So thankfully, friend of the show, Carmine Savastano, has a really good summary of Ross Crozier from his Two Princes and a King website. Ross was born during 1922 and in his youth was educated in the Illinois city of DeKalb. Probably butchered that.
DeKalb.
He enlisted with the United States Air Force amidst 1940 and supported its military counterintelligence efforts. Crozier became chief of section for the Caribbean Air Command's political analysis efforts, but as decade was ending, he subsequently departed the Air Force. In the course of 1949, Ross was contract agent for the agency, and 4 years later was managing projects to infiltrate the Cuban Communist Party. Amid the same period, he was granted clearance for use in agency operations PB Success, targeting Guatemala's political leadership. Amongst 1954, Ross created a spy network inside the University of Havana, given the cryptonym A.M. Fardarch, Fhodarch. He subsequently assisted several clandestine agency projects in South American countries and Cuba. In the course of 1958, he was assisting in Mexico City station projects and further attacked communist-aligned targets, and was sent by the Havana station the same year to meet and gather intelligence on Fidel Castro and his revolutionary forces. Amidst 1961, Ross was assigned to the Miami station and was a case officer for the D.R.E. I'm going to say it wrong. The D.R.E., Cuban's exile group, was supported by the agency to further anti-Castro operations that included propaganda, sabotage, and nearly any illegal project which reduced the Castro's regime's power. Crozier's agency contract was terminated in the fall of 1963 following internal comments of overly emotional behavior. And related documents state he was employed by U.S. Postal Service a year after being dismissed by the CIA. So he became a mailman, Rob.
As one does after they leave the CIA.
And, you know, I have some documents and a really good story coming up that I think might lend credence to why he was relieved from the CIA or contract was terminated, I guess is the right term. Words matter. And I'll come back to that. So, Juan Manuel Salvat.
Also known as the Cuban Jim DiEugenio. I'm sorry, did I say that out loud?
Well, it's funny because I'm looking for pictures of these guys, and I know that's him in his later life on the far right.
I'm looking right in the middle. Ah, damn.
Yeah, that does look like him, yeah. And on the left picture, I think he's much younger there, with a Cuban flag above him. And I couldn't 100% verify that's him, but I kind of looked at all three and was like, yeah.
It looks like he likes cheeseburgers too. So yes.
Yeah. Yes. So Juan Manuel Salvat was a Cuban activist and dissident who played a significant role in the anti-Castro movement as a co-founder of the D.R.E. He was born in La Grande, Las Villas, Cuba. He studied at a Jesuit school and later at the University of Havana, which he became the Secretary General of the Federacional Estudiantil, the FEU, some other student group in '59. During this time, he published several university newspapers and became involved in anti-communist activities. And we're going to see a trend here with the propaganda, right? With whether it's Joanides or Salvat, who ended up creating his own publishing company after. In 1960, he co-founded the D.R.E. at the University of Havana with other students, including a couple other scafuzas, to oppose Fidel Castro's growing communist influence. The group protested the visit of the Soviet diplomat in 1960, which led to their expulsion from the university. Facing repression, including beatings, arrests, and expulsion, Salvat went into hiding for 3 weeks before seeking asylum. So then he goes to the United States for exile in 1960, arrived in Miami in June of 1960, helped establish the D.R.E. in exile, which became a prominent anti-Castro organization known for its militant activities and ties to the CIA. And he conducted sabotage propaganda campaigns and notable raid on a Havana hotel in August 1962. So, blah blah blah, all this stuff. He left the D.R.E. in 1966 after the D.R.E. disbanded, and
He had to stand on the back of the boat so that they can get over all the waves on the way in.
But his contributions to the D.R.E. and his later cultural efforts made him a significant figure in the Cuban exile community. So,
Yes.
now we're going to go to Luis Fernandez Roca.
He was a big swinging D in the D.R.E., Joe.
He was, and I would argue maybe the biggest BSD, and I'll explain that in a minute. But he was a key figure in the D.R.E., prominent leader during the early 1960s. He was the Secretary General. By 1963, Fernandez Roca was a central figure. He was the one that was actually receiving, Rob, the $25,000 monthly.
And distributing.
Yes, and distributing it, which, I mean, when you have the money, you have the power.
That's right.
And you're distributing it, right? And I couldn't find a picture of him because he kind of like disappeared in later life, if you will. As in, at least there's no pictures on him on Google. But
found Rockefeller Records.
that would be great. So it's an appropriate joke. So, Rob, we've talked a lot about on this show
we've talked a lot of shit.
A lot of shit, that's true, and a lot of nonsense. But among the not nonsense is we've talked about how there's a process to how documents are created and how there's a flow of documents, right? Like, for example, something comes out in the news. Someone complains / makes an inquiry. Then, the agency, whether it's a chief of station or a special agent in charge, gets shit, flows downhill, gets the memo, and they get asked, what's going on here? And then they have to get back to the boss with an explanation of what's going on here. And then the boss will go back to the initial originator of the request and give a report, right? And you could kind of track that whole flow of documents, right?
And real quick, Joe, before we get too far into this,
sure.
I believe Josh was asking about the D.R.E. being a CIA organization from the get-go. Well, kind of. They were actually formed in 1934, which predates the inception of the CIA. They were active for a couple of years, then went away. They came back again in 1954 for a couple of years, and then went away again. And the CIA kind of co-opted them back into existence in 1960, with a lot of support from Cubans, because of course, university age students are the most active politically, so of course these are going to be the people you're going to focus on, the minds you want to change. They're young, they're impressionable, they're willing to do crazy shit, so yeah, they they just kind of brought it back for a third time. It didn't take much prompting with the help of the University of Havana students.
Right. It's because they had such a developed kind of stay behind network of people, of students in Havana, right? And that's why the CIA recognized their value. Hey, these guys have a lot of contacts and people in Cuba that we could learn things from, gain intelligence from. That was one of the main reasons.
Yeah, and who was at the University of Havana in 1960? Carlos Bringuier was, studying to be a lawyer, but somehow he ended up to be a doctor. Joe, I don't know. I don't know how that works. It's called Cuban. I don't know what. Cuban magic.
Yeah. And fun fact about Luis Fernandez Roca, he's also a doctor. He got kicked out of medical school in Havana, and then later got his doctor's degree in America. And
From Frederick Chrisman.
Well, when I was searching on him, he had some lawsuits about, he was like delivered babies, whatever that doctor is called. And he had like a bunch of lawsuits against him that came up on my searches.
Not surprised. Just let the nurses do most of the work here. I'll smack it on his ass after it comes out.
Yeah.
We need a sponge down here. Forceps.
Yeah. But Salvat, Roca, Bringuier, they all kind of originated from the University of Havana, right?
Sí, señor.
So that's kind of the common denominator there in terms of the D.R.E. But I want to look at this timeline, Rob. I put this together today. So in late 1962, it's agreed upon. Cuban Missile Crisis lasted from about October 16th to October 28th of 1962, right?
Yeah, and allegedly the information about the Russian missiles in Cuba came initially from sources from within the D.R.E. Later confirmed by U-2 flyover photos.
Yes. Yeah.
So the D.R.E. was essential in giving us the information first. That's why the CIA had no problem funding them to the tune of $25,000 a month, which was a fuck pile of money in 1960. Okay.
Yeah, that we know about, right? That amount. Officially. So Kennedy kind of de-escalates, right? And then November 6th and November 9th, you have the two articles that come out about missiles hidden in Cuban caves.
Also from the D.R.E.
Yes. That is the common theme here. Kenneth O'Donnell, special advisor to President Kennedy, sends a memo on that same day, the second article comes out, to the CIA director, John McCone, asking, what the hell is going on here? And I'm going to show you this in a second. November 15th, memorandum for the record. Dick Helms has a meeting. He summons Luis Fernandez Roca. I'm guessing to D.C. They didn't give the location. Definitely D.C. And you can probably assume, since the memorandum happened on the 15th, that the meeting was a couple days before the 15th, right? So immediately, Dick Helms, after getting, so McCone gets the complaint from O'Donnell, right? And he goes, and of course McCone doesn't really know what's going on here. So he then talks to Helms. He goes, what's going on here? Helms immediately, knowing that it came from the D.R.E., summons Roca to D.C. And then, by the way, you are going to have a new contact who will report directly to me. And that person was named Howard or Joe Joanides. So they got themselves into some shit here. And I have the whole documentary record. I think this is the article on the 6th. It doesn't have a date on it, but it was in a CIA document. Exiles tell of Cuban missiles hidden in Cuban caves. And of course, Kennedy, at this point, had just de-escalated the Cuban Missile Crisis. And here are these guys from the D.R.E. trying to escalate it, right? I don't know who media contacts they used, but there were some, right? This is the map that was attached to the article, which actually gives a little, tells you where the missiles are hidden in those caves. This is the one on November 9th, underground bombers in Cuba, right? Cuban refugee sources said last night Soviet MiG fighters and bombers were stored in secret Russian-built underground hangars, some with as many as 16 floors beneath the surface, at 11 strategic air bases in Cuba's 6 provinces. The D.R.E. issued a detailed report on the 11 bases, which is said was brought here by couriers from Cuba, which, again, they had a ton of couriers and stay behind contacts in Cuba, so it's not something to just dismiss right away. Here we go. Kenneth O'Donnell, letter memorandum for Director John McCone. The president has asked me to call this newspaper article to your attention, and he'd like to have this situation looked into. Would you be good enough to submit a report for me for referral to him on this subject? Many thanks. Right? Essentially calling Director McCone, what the hell are you guys doing here?
Or as Tannenbaum would say, John McCain.
John McCain. Yeah. Oh man, that never gets old. So this is the kind of headliner, the heading, as I indicated in my letter on 14th November. So he responds 5 days after the letter. I'm sending you additional information in response to your request on 9 November for comment on the UPI article concerning, quote, underground bombers in Cuba. Attached is a CIA memo assessing this report. The subject of secret storage of military supplies in Cuba will continue to be given the most careful study and analysis in the intelligence community. So he's kind of saving face here, right? Like, we're going to do everything we can, type of thing.
Hold on, go back to that real quick.
Sure.
I like how it says signed and then typed John McCone right above another typed John McCone.
Yeah.
He didn't even bother to sign it.
No.
With his hand.
Yeah, that is true.
That's weird.
That is weird. I mean, because the president's pissed off and is asking you to look into this and why the organization you're funding is putting out things like this when I just squashed nuclear war. You know what I mean? I could understand why you'd be upset at this, that these things are coming out from your camp, right?
Well, yeah.
So he responds very officially, we have no evidence to confirm the reported presence of Cuba of secret Russian-built underground hangars at 11 strategic air bases. There are 2 kinds of activity, however, which are underway and which could possibly have led to the reports of underground hangars. One is the construction of covered aircraft, regiments, blah, blah, blah. And the other is use of natural or man-made caves. So they're kind of hedging their bets here. We know that the Cubans, this is the next page, have been using caves for storing conventional military weapons for many years. History just repeats itself with Iran these days, huh? But there is no hard information linking the caves with the concealment of Soviet missiles in Cuba. There have been, however, recent observations of Soviet trucks emerging from a cave near one of the 4 coastal defense cruise missile sites. Okay. So, and they go on to discredit the story by saying that they couldn't have had it there because laborers had been working on the preparation of underground installations since February 1960, i.e., some months before the Soviet Union and Cuba formally reestablished diplomatic relations. So they kind of use like some technicality to get out of it. So, but before Mr. McCone responds to JFK, you have Mr. Dick Helms summoning Luis Fernandez Roca, aka kind of the big swinging dick in the D.R.E, the one who's accepting and distributing the money.
Yeah.
Oh, I just saw this. Time and place, 13 November 1962. So O'Donnell sends the message to McCone on the 9th, and 4 days later, Rocha is summoned to D.C.
To Mr. Helms' office,
Yes.
to the principal's office.
And bro, it's a great analogy just to the principal's office, because Rocha comes in like a student that's apologizing, trying not to get suspended.
Yeah.
I just want to mention two things before starting the conversation with Mr. Helms. I'm very sorry about the difficulties which may have been caused by the Miami Herald newspaper incident. Again, just completely screwed. He desired, because that's where they're getting all their money from, he desired to thank Mr. Helms for his, quote, deference and express his greatest appreciation for being given the opportunity to discuss their problem with Mr. Helms. Mr. Helms replied that he fully understood and accepted the explanation about the newspaper article and was happy to have the opportunity to discuss the agency's relationship with Mr. Rocha's group. Of course, the D.R.E. Number two.
If you ever publish some fucking shit like that without our approval again, boy,
Bro,
let me tell you something.
You literally just summarized what is in this document. I'm not joking. Mr. Helms stated he was familiar with the D.R.E. situation and desired to work out a slightly different way of doing business. He realized there have been more ups and downs in the relationship and that the agency was not lily white in abiding by many of its commitments, but that many of the changes were due to factors beyond the agency's control. He continued, there were no decisions as yet made by the U.S. government regarding the future of handling of the Castro problem. The primary items being considered at the present time, both in New York and Washington, were the removal of the missiles and bombers from Cuba and on-site inspection. If a time comes when the D.R.E., this is Helms, time comes when the D.R.E. feels their course of action is no longer compatible with U.S. policy, Mr. Helms wanted to make this point clear. The D.R.E. should be frank and honest, and so state it. AKA, don't go behind our back. He did not want to be devious about our relationship, but he wanted to develop the relationship as a, quote, reasonable collaboration. This gets even better. Mr. Helms informed Rocha he was changing the agency contact for the D.R.E. in Miami. He also stated the new contact would be able to come to Mr. Helms for any clarification needed regarding the relationship.
And this is exit Ross Crozier, enter Howard Gebler.
Yes. Enter
AKA
George.
Joanides.
Yes. So they got in so much trouble, right, that Helms had to personally assign Joanides there, someone he trusted. He literally is like, we have to change things up here. Just like a sports team, when you're losing, right? When you're 0-6 to start the season, guess what? The coach is getting fired. They're going in another direction.
Right. Well, Joanides down there, with this other persona, and he was backstopped as a military officer. Okay. And he was keeping a tight eye on the D.R.E., meeting with them up to 3 times a week, if necessary, to keep an eye on them and make sure that they weren't doing anything stupid.
Right. So, and that's a great point, Rob, because I'm going to go back to my point in saying that there's no way Joanides keeping a tight eye on the D.R.E. at this point would have not been aware of their TV and radio shows with Oswald. I know it's not in the documents. I know it can't be proven. I know other people are assuming that. But for me, it's hard to believe. That was my point.
I don't think it's that hard to believe. I mean, you got to remember, Joe, they're focused on what's going on in Cuba and where all these guys are at, which is in Miami. Okay. They're not technically worried about one delegate in New Orleans or one delegate in Arizona or one delegate in California. That stuff is just ancillary news that may come rolling in once in a blue moon. And how important is it really? It doesn't directly affect what we're doing here in Miami and with Cuba right here.
Okay. No, listen, I completely understand your point. And, it's completely fine that we might disagree, but I'm saying,
who gives a shit if you have some idiot, one lone idiot in New Orleans being a pro Castro supporter?
right. But you have
That's not news.
you have the Bringuier press release in August. You have them going on TV and radio. Was Joannides so busy that he just looked over that? Possibly.
We don't know who Bringuier. Bringuier couldn't. He might not have even sent it to the Miami. His people in Miami. We don't know.
No, I'm saying, but would he not get like word if he was keeping such an eye on it? Right? Like I feel like
an eye on the guys in Miami and in Cuba, the network. The only way he's going to know anything is if they tell him.
Right.
And it would have to be deemed important enough for them to tell him. But how important is it really that you have one screwball in New Orleans handing out leaflets on the street,
right,
saying "Viva Fidel"?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I can totally buy into that because he was high up. He was like one of the top people at JFK, so probably doing 10 other things, 20 other things more.
I mean, what I'm saying is they were more focused on what and worried about what was going on in Cuba than what one jackass is doing in New Orleans. And we have zero evidence whatsoever to support the fact that the D.R.E. ever said anything to Howard about Oswald. Period. End of discussion.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I don't disagree with any of that. I think it's a good conversation and that we disagree a little bit. All good, like
next Thursday you can catch Joe as the new co-host of JFK Facts with Jefferson Morley.
Come on. No, but I'm saying because he was put in there specifically to keep an eye on these scafuzas, right? At the D.R.E. These people at the D.R.E.
in Miami.
Right. But
we don't even know if Joannides ever went to New Orleans.
Yeah, I have no idea. No.
Ever.
No.
Did he ever meet Bringuier? Ever.
No documentation on it, so we can't assume so.
No, we can't.
So, anyways, it's a good food for thought,
Yeah, it's a good nothing burger. Eat it.
All right, let me continue here. As for a future operational program for the D.R.E., Mr. Helms stated that presently did not know what this would be. Mr. Roca stated that in all honesty, he could not guarantee that under all circumstances, the D.R.E. would be able to continue the relationship with the CIA. For a change in U.S. policy towards coexistence with Cuba would differ from what the D.R.E. believes is a duty to their country. And he, as the Secretary General, Roca, to his men, this would mean a break in our relationship as they felt they must continue fighting Castro in any form possible. So here they are in this memo acknowledging the differences they have. And Roca's even saying to Helms, like, yo, if you guys like want to coexist with Cuba, like, we're out. That's like the bro translation.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the gist of it.
Right. He did give Mr. Helms his word of honor. He would inform his contact of Mr. Helms when the D.R.E. felt they could no longer cooperate with the agency because of the difference in what they believed in U.S. policy.
We don't even know what Helms is even telling this guy. Is he telling him about the Castro plots? Like, hey, just chill out. Don't worry. We're handling Castro. We've got things in the works. We're going to take care of this bastard. Don't you worry. You'll get your country back.
Yeah. Probably not. I mean, that shit's compartmentalized up the ass. You know what I mean? Why would Helms? I mean, he could say something like you just said, like we're working on things, right? But he's not going to give them specific plans. But Roka's playing hardball too here, and I think that's what a lot of the Cuban exile community felt.
Roka knows that we need him and his intelligence as much as vice versa, that they need us to take care of Castro.
Yes,
because they can't do it on their own.
Right. Good point. That's a really good point. Roka claimed that they were anxious to cooperate with the agency, and it was foolish to think without agency support they could continue their present level of activity. Roka, in fact, stated that 80 to 90% of their activity would cease if agency funds were discontinued. This would be suicide, the memo goes on to say. And according to Roka, he did not want it, and thought a satisfactory arrangement could be reached. So, this makes a lot of sense to me. Just people that are really strong in their beliefs, just holding their ground, both needing each other, right? And I think the memo was kind of saying that. So let's go to
real quick, Joe.
Yeah, sure.
Sally says, how many people actually listened to the show? Was it a big station? I think people make Oswald to be way more than what he was. And what she's talking about is, of course, the show Latin Listening Post. It was literally a 5-minute show on some raggedy ass AM radio station. It was a 30-some minute interview that was cut down into 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And how many people actually listen to this? Probably not many.
If you scroll through your AM radio dial, you'll see how much bullshit is there.
Yeah,
right?
There's a bunch of bullshit there.
Yeah.
And again, how many people actually listened, or the ones that did, who cared? I don't know. Oh, the double B comes through. Boom.
Once again, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Much obliged. We appreciate it.
Yes, sir, we do. And I guess I've been mispronouncing Roka. It's Rocha. Not surprisingly that I butchered it.
It's a hard CH, James.
Rocha. Thank you. So,
kind of like Huma, right, Joe?
Homa.
Huma.
Home UH.
Huma.
I wouldn't know how to pronounce it if I didn't have a girlfriend there in the past.
Yeah. Joe's first.
I know you've heard it all before. I know.
Jesus.
I like to brag. By the way, speaking of girlfriends, Erica came to the game last night and was not happy about my level of contact.
She exclaimed, "He doesn't even touch me this much at home. What is he doing here?"
She just doesn't want me to be like 100% CTE, Joe.
Hey, Joe. Every once in a while, you got to slam her against the boards, if you know what I'm saying.
All right, I'm going to continue in this memo. Regarding the new contact, Mr. Helms stated he wanted to select a man who would and could maintain the collaboration he had outlined and would be helpful and of assistance to the D.R.E. He also stated that this contact would be responsible to him for the relationship. Mr. Rocha stated he wanted to be the point of contact in the D.R.E., and if in his absence, either Manuel Salvat or Jose Laza would be the alternate points of contact. Mr. Helms added there was one other point of utmost importance, and this is where we get into what you talked about before, Rob. And that was that if in the future the D.R.E. desired or wanted to have a press conference or desired to appear on TV, quote, let us know about it, end quote. Mr. Helms stated he didn't want to tie their hands and he intended to deal with them as responsible men, but, quote, give us a fair warning, end quote. As in, don't do anything we don't give you permission to do, or you're going to lose your money. It's kind of the translation. And they didn't stop, as we'll see. Mr. Helms did not want the D.R.E. to think we desired to tell them what to, or they can or cannot do, but he felt it was in their interest to get our reaction on such matters. Mr. Helms added, you, Mr. Rocha, are a responsible man. I am a responsible man. Let's do business in a mature manner. Mr. Rocha fully agreed. Whew. Helms called him to DC, Luis Fernandez Rocha, and just completely roasted him over these articles that we showed previously. Right? There's no other interpretation.
Tiny says, I thought it was worth a mention that Cubans were banned from being FBI agents. The first Cuban-born agent was not hired until 1980. And interesting, Joe, that they sent him to New York City to spy on Joe's extended family, the Italians.
That is really interesting. They're kind of leveraging a past relationship, right, with Cubans and the mafia type of thing.
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting that the FBI didn't trust Cubans until 1980.
Yeah.
I mean,
that is really interesting. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. And I actually have an interesting FBI document in a second, but we're going to fast forward here to the end of 1962 to September 11th, 1963. And this is to the chief, the special affairs staff from the chief of station, JFK, Ted Shackley. I'm guessing at the time. In response to our query, a D.R.E. representative delivered the attached reply, which we found under separate cover. To Howard, Rob.
Yes.
From Fernando Garcia Chacon. Subject, $10 million offering made by Mr. Luis Fernandez Rocha for the death of Castro. So here Rocha is getting in trouble again in September of 1963 for allegedly offering a $10 million bounty on Castro's head as Kennedy's trying to make peace.
And $10 million in 1963 was a lot of money.
Yeah, it's like 100 mil. It's crazy.
Jesus.
A magazine of dubious reputation.
And invite all the rogues and mercs from around the world to set off for Cuba.
A magazine of dubious reputation recently published an article written by a man supposedly called Luis Gutierrez, accompanied by a document signed by our Secretary General, Luis Rocha, offering $10 million reward for the death of Castro. Certainly, what's stated in this article is false. So this is the D.R.E. response to Howard, to the CIA. Mr. Rocha had no connection with it or made such a deal. The person that wrote this article is named like a former member of the D.R.E., Mr. Luis Gutierrez. Yeah, convenient, right? However, both names are common in Cuba, just like John Smith in the U.S.
Or John Martin.
Yeah, but that's their response to the CIA. They're like, oh, it could be anyone. We don't know, right? Like anyone's named Luis Gutierrez.
Yeah, they're
right?
all Gutierrez, Fernandez, Sanchez, Rodriguez,
Hernandez, yeah.
Roca.
Yeah. So essentially, they're saying this wasn't us, right? The DRE response to the FBI or CIA. At the same time, we state that Mr. Luis Gutierrez, former member of the DRE, has had nothing to do in this matter since he has completely abandoned this type of activities. Lastly, we wish to state that it's completely irresponsible for Luis Fernandez Rocha to offer $10 million since it is by all well known that he does not have such an amount of money.
No shit. What the CIA does.
Yeah. But again, DRE causing drama, right? Like we just detailed in the end of 1962 with the missiles in the Cuban caves, to this, to the Kennedy assassination. And you showed this earlier.
Sí, señor.
You showed this. This was a statement by the DRE, which they actually released on November 22nd, 63, but it was included in the publication the day after, right? You showed this. You showed that. So fast forward a little bit to 1964. This is an FBI document now. So again, not really involved with the DRE, not to my knowledge at least.
Suspicious of the DRE, more likely.
Exactly. On June 12th, 1964, MMT1, a Cuban exile who was a member of the DRE at Miami, Florida, advised that as of mid-April 64, the DRE suffered from factionalism growing out of its plans for military action against Cuba. The factions were represented by Angel Hernandez Rojo, who supported infiltration and sabotage, and by Isidro Borja, who favored hit-and-run attacks against the Cuban coast. According to MMT1, the document of the Dominican Republic was the government of the Dominican Republic was disposed to make available to the DRE a base in which in the Dominican Republic from which to operate against Cuba. Also, it was anticipated that the Dominican Republic would furnish the DRE with some weapons and possibly boats. MMT1 stated that Israeldo Borja had been able to influence DRE leader Juan Manuel Salvat,
AKA the Cuban Jim DiEugenio.
Yes. Which he was able to obtain the necessary funds to repair and equip the DRE boats Juanin and Virgilio, which are under Borja's control, whereas the faction headed by Hernandez Rojo was unable to get the same financial assistance from the DRE as headed by Salvat. I wonder why. Again, Rocha is distributing the funds. There are different factions within the DRE. Some people want to attack this way. Some people want to attack that way. And
the natives are getting restless is what's happening.
Yeah.
Especially in the wake of the assassination of President Kennedy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, exactly. About
the subject of Cuba suddenly seemed to disappear off everyone's lips after that.
Right.
For some reason.
Right. And they're trying to keep it in the news,
Yeah.
And like at public attention. So, but interesting, FBI has a Cuban exile informant of the DRE telling them what's going on here, right? Because of course the CIA would never share exact details of the plans of what's going on, right? Joanides is not talking to Hoover, the special agent in charge of Miami, right, about this shit. But interesting to see the interagency conflict that we frequently mention.
Yes. This is what I'm saying. This is where Joanides' attention would have been. He would have been worried about what was going on in Cuba and worried about what was going on in Miami with the DRE itself, because the shit started to get out of hand real quick after Kennedy is murdered.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, and they weren't, Rob. They weren't supposed to uh, release what they released about Oswald right away. I believe Howard said, "Let me consult with Washington and get back to you," and they just released it anyway.
Right.
Their publication on the November 23rd. So they're saying, kind of, screw the CIA and what they think. We're going to try to take advantage of this opportunity, right?
Yep.
And it goes back to the conversation with Helms, like, if you're going to do anything, can you please let us know about it, type of thing. It's very consistent when you go through everything. It was very intriguing to me. MMT1 further advised that as much as Luis Fernandez Roca was the general secretary of the D.R.E., he was prevailed upon by those D.R.E. members who favored, quote, the fight from within Cuba action to exert his influence against the military tactics planned by Borja. However, Roca was unable to overrule Borja because Borja himself is a member of the executive board of the D.R.E. and appeared to have Juan Manuel Salvat's, also a member of the executive board, under his control. According to MMT1, the situation within the D.R.E. was so divided that Fernandez Roca presented his resignation, whereupon Salvat became the leader of the D.R.E. Subsequent to the resignation of Rocha, Angel Hernandez Rojo, can't make this up, also presented his resignation, and this was followed by several others who had previously been active members. So you have longtime members quitting over internal disagreements, right? Rocha trying to do the fight from within, maybe the students in Havana. Borja trying to be like, screw it, let's do boat attacks and just let's shell them with artillery, type of thing. Fascinating. MMT1 advised that Borja has since taken over the military section of the D.R.E. and as of June 12, 1964, appeared ready to undertake some military action. June 15, 1964, Rocha advised he had resigned his position as Secretary General of the D.R.E. in the beginning of April for purely personal reasons, primarily to study for an entrance examination of the University of Miami Medical School. He said he had no dispute with other leaders of the D.R.E. and in fact was in accord with plans of the D.R.E. as fostered by Juan Manuel Salvat, now regarded as the D.R.E. leader at Miami. And it kind of goes on and more of the same. Essentially, Rocha said, I'm just going to go back and study to be a doctor again. Screw this Cuban exile shit, right?
Yeah.
Fast forward to 67. Memorandum for the record, CIA document. Possible D.R.E. animus towards President Kennedy. This is my last slide, Rob. The memorandum makes a record of recollection which has been brought to mind in recent weeks since my return from Yugoslavia in late November 1966. In spring 1961, upon returning from Berlin, I was assigned to JFK. One of the cases on which I worked from then until shortly before my reassignment to headquarters in late summer 1963 concerned funding of overseas elements of the D.R.E., which had its main office in Miami. The case officer for this group during this time, spring 1961, was Mr. Rosh Crozier, since reassigned. I believe that it is this group, the D.R.E., which has been referred to in investigations into the president's assassination as the D.R.E., whose New Orleans representative is said to have had contacts with Oswald. They're talking about Bringuier. I have assumed that since the time I was transferred from Miami and scheduled for my next assignment, redacted chief of base officers better and more recently informed than myself had probably examined in detail all aspects of the D.R.E. involvement in order to rule out any slight possibility that compromise of the CIA sponsorship of this organization might in any way embarrass the agency. Recent news reports of investigations centering in New Orleans, talking about Garrison, on the assassination have once again brought to mind the concern I felt in November '63, by which time, however, I was far removed from current knowledge of the operation. I do retain a distinct recollection that D.R.E. leadership, specifically Luis Fernandez Rocha, who I met several times, did hold sentiments of chagrin and embitterment that President Kennedy had not more forcefully pursued a quote liberation of Cuba. Whether or not this animus, which could be discerned as occasional signs of anger or the contempt or of discouragement, might have been translated into a wish for revenge, may be better known to other officers who dealt with the group in the summer of '63. And this is from Calvin Thomas, whose name was redacted, Rob. You know, we've talked about the new documents and the brackets. Redacted, this is the 2025 release. But he's pretty much saying, yeah, they did not like Kennedy and would not have reacted well to news that he was planning to coexist with the Castro regime.
Well, not necessarily the Castro regime, but more the Russians. You know, because he's still at this time. These Castro plots are still afoot. Right. He's trying to have détente with the Russians, not necessarily Castro. Right.
Yeah.
And again, with all this wild shit going on, you can see why the CIA are playing the cover your ass game and deep sixing all this shit. Because they didn't want news of this coming out, how they collected information and intelligence, what groups they are working with and funding, the propaganda techniques, and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And so you can see how, because one of the CI groups that they're funding, or I'm sorry, one of the anti-Castro groups that they are funding, one of their delegates had contact with somebody who killed the president a couple months before the assassination. And not necessarily that it means anything other than exactly what it means. There was contact. There was a scuffle. There were words. But if word got out that the CIA was funding this organization, you can imagine the backlash.
Yeah.
You can imagine the outward suspicion.
Mm-hmm.
Even though not necessarily anything had to have happened, or it was anything like overtly that they were trying to trap Lee Harvey Oswald into something or set him up to do something. It's just one of those things that doesn't look good.
Yeah.
And they don't want to have to explain.
Yeah.
Add it to the list. Doesn't necessarily mean they were overtly culpable for the assassination. Doesn't mean they were working with Oswald, to set him up for anything. All it necessarily means is they had a working relationship with an anti-Castro group that was funded by the CIA, and one of their delegates happened to run into Oswald in New Orleans. That's it. That's all we have proof of. But it's still a difficult story to have to explain to people and to have them understand exactly what the CIA was doing and why they were doing it. That's my point.
Yeah. Yeah. But, you could see how the D.R.E. is causing drama throughout 1962 and right after the assassination, and in 1964 and 1967 still, or I mean that was the date of the document. The guy was like,
Again, they wanted the U.S. government to do something about Castro. It was in their best interest that we do something about Castro, because they knew no matter how many, shitty boats they sent towards Cuba,
it's not going to make a difference.
they're not going to make a difference, and most likely going to end up dead or in jail.
Yeah,
which they weren't in any rush to do. So,
right. Yeah, and how would these people react, Rob, hypothetically, if they heard that Kennedy was in back channel negotiations with Castro in the fall of 1963?
yeah, and look, by this time too, we had outlawed this shit with the Neutrality Act that specifically prohibited any missions, leaving the United States shores for anything, to attack Cuba. So really, their only friend was the CIA or our military. And if these people in the D.R.E. thought that they were meeting with someone from our military, with the guy said he was a sergeant, he was a military person, and we have the documents that they used to get this Howard Jebler's military backstop. So they thought they're dealing with a member of our military. They might not even have known he was CIA. Who the hell knows?
Well, Rocha would have known being summoned to, but not everyone else, right? Because he was summoned to Helms's office. But yeah, I mean, there's all types of cover your ass shit going on, especially, here they are talking about setting up bases in the Dominican Republic because you're not allowed to launch attacks from the U.S., right? The FBI is going after you. The CIA is kind of like, has like a no look, no ask policy, right? It's a mess. It really is.
And Rocha may not have known before he was even summoned to DC that he was dealing with the CIA.
That's true. That is true. He
And
could have got
because
that
it doesn't
call.
come across from Helms as, this is what we are telling you to do. It was more of a lot of suggestions.
Yes.
That, it's not a good look for us, for you to be saying all this shit. He could have thought he just got himself in trouble with the CIA. Not necessarily that he was actually working for the CIA.
Right.
We had no idea.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Howard, it's not good tradecraft for Howard, in theory, to come out and say, hey, I work for the CIA.
Because if he's appearing to them as a military officer, he could have said, he could have met with Rocha or Rocha, whatever. He could have met with him and said, look, it's not a good look for you to be saying, coming out and saying this stuff. In fact, I've been told that our CIA wants to talk to you in person in DC. Here's your plane ticket, type of thing.
Yeah.
I would advise you to show up and be briefed.
Yeah. And if you go into Helm's office, it's probably not a good meeting. You're going to get your ass handed to you. And I think that's what happened after, like I displayed with those documents.
Yeah, he got a good talking to, and it didn't necessarily have to come from Howard, the
Right.
military guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. I just thought it was fascinating to see that trail of documents and how everything developed. Right. This is very consistent to what we've talked about a lot in the past.
That's the real story, folks. Not this made up horse shit that's fantasy land. Stuff that Morley is out here peddling as some sort of giant revelation, screaming from the hilltops that I've been telling y'all for 25 years, George Ioannidis this and George Ioannidis that, and it's a whole lot of nothing. At least so far. Now, I'm one to give credit where credit's due. If any more things come out to say otherwise, then I'll eat my hat right here live on the Loon Gummin podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I'll be eating anything except for a couple of gummy bears and a
Couple nothing burgers.
couple nothing burgers, maybe a Twizzler or two here or there. But yeah, I mean, the reality of the story of what is going on is much more interesting than supposing these magical connections between George Joe Needy and Lee Harvey Oswald. You can see why, given this guy's background and what he was dealing with in terms of the D.R.E. and Cuba, that he would be called out of retirement to run interference during the HSCA investigation.
Yeah.
And not necessarily because they did anything nefarious, but because this guy would have known exactly where not to step.
That's true.
And he got a medal for it. And died in 1990.
Mm-hmm.
And probably a star in Langley.
Probably. I think Rocha died in 2021.
Wow.
Yeah. A lot of these Cuban exiles live a long time. Must be something.
I bet Salvat didn't make it out of the 70s. I'm guessing congestive heart failure before the end of the 70s. From one too many cheeseburgers. But hey, who knows? He might have outlived us all.
Oh, I'm gonna ask your favorite person.
Cheeseburgers, I see.
Oh, Lord. All right, Joe, you got anything else?
No, that's it, sir.
All right, grab the damn dog. It's time to dance our way up out of here with Dino. Folks, thanks for hanging with us. We see you had a party in the chat. Always fun to hang out with you. Hope you learned something. I know we did. Hi, Ruby.
Hi.
Ruby, thanks you for stopping by.
Hi, Sally.
Told in the name of
Hi,
truth.
Tiny.
The greatest crimes are committed in the name of justice. The
You guys
quotation of
rock.
Jim Garrison's,
We'll see
"It
you
could be used
next
for him
Wednesday
or against him in
on
this strange
members
case."
only. And if you're not a member yet, follow the link in the description and join us as a covert operator or higher. Support this show. And if you can't, just hit the damn like button. Share the show. Watch it again. Why not? Watch it on a loop. Just let it play all damn night. We appreciate it.
Yes.
Good.
Thank you, guys. Peace.
We did our job.
Yes.
Good night, all. Have a lovely weekend, and we'll see you next Wednesday for another exciting edition of the Member Show. Till then, pop, 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 pop. Oh, and be looking out for a quick hits this weekend at some point to drop, too. Just saying.
Ooh.
You're welcome. Peace.
And a book review. Peace.
Yes, and a book review. Possibly. For sure.
Maybe.
Definitely.